To order at 10 a.m. Would like to start off. First of all, are there any Texas Realtors in the house? Thank you for attending. We'll start off with the American Pledge. Alicia Austin is going to lead us in the American, followed by Linda Bastrall, Texas Realtor, in the Texas Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank y'all for volunteering. Agenda item number 2, discussion and possible action of any absences. I see none. So let's go to agenda item 3. Texas Realtor Winter Meetings are going on. We have been very fortunate as a commission to be invited to speak to various committees: risk reduction, professional development, executive board, board of directors. I would like to thank all the commissioners, Russell, Wilkinson, Lerner, for being over there networking. I know the other commissioners have also networked with them. Again, I think it's very important that we have that relationship. I came out of a meeting yesterday, and Avis Wukash, former commissioner, was standing, chairman was standing there, and John Ekstrom, chairman from a few years ago, was standing there, and it's always good to see them. It's good to see former commissioners here. I saw Joanne Justice earlier, so we appreciate everybody being here. Let me tell you a little bit about today's meeting. As chairman, I have the prerogative to move agenda items around, and we will not be in numerical order today, I promise you that. Normally, we have anywhere from 1 to 4 or 5 contested cases. Those are orders that were brought back from SOA that we hear. We normally have 1, 2, or 3 recovery fund cases that we hear. And normally we will hear those. We'll go into executive session. We will come back out and we will finish the hearing and ask questions and everything. Today we have 0 contested cases and we have 0 recovery fund cases. So in order to help your time frame, we're going to go through as much agenda as possible before we go into executive. Normally we break for executive. You're required to step out for an hour, have lunch, whatever, then come back for the rest of the meeting. We're going to try to get everything done before we go into executive, and you will get CE up to that point. You're certainly welcome to stay after executive. Executive, we're going to be talking about evaluations of staff, of Chelsea's, but I mean, anyway, we're not going to make you stay an hour and then come back for a 10-minute staff without the true meat and potatoes of a contested cases and recovery. So that's kind of the game plan today. It will probably not work out, but that is the game plan, okay? Agenda item number 4, we're going to recognize a couple departing public servants. I know Marion Napoleon is departing ESAC. I know she is on virtually. And Marion, we've known each other for a long, long time. Thank you for your service. ESAC is a very valuable part of this commission and this agency. And it's our grassroots. It's our ears in what's going on and what we need to do as far as education to not only, help the licensees, but our ultimate goal is to protect the consumer. And so thank you for your service. We also have someone here that is also departing from ESAC, and y'all might know this guy. His name is Chuck Jacobus, and I know Chuck is here. If he will come up, I would like to get a photo with him and present it. And if you have a license, I promise you got your license reading one of his contract books. I promise you that. I mean, I think his name has been on the contract book since I've been licensed, and that's almost 30 years. 50. Thank you for your. I asked you earlier if you knew anything about contracts. We got to get a picture.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate this.
Okay.
I have to say that I learned contracts from that man too, out of his books, and I'd only ever heard of him and seen his picture until I had to teach for Avis the first broker responsibility course that was offered for that term, and I looked down and he was in the first table. You want to see somebody panic, was me. He has been, it's been an honor to just have him around all these years, and I don't know if he's coming back or not, but he certainly would be welcome.
All right, very well. Agenda item number 5, election of vice chair. And let me go over some protocol on this. For each position, I will call for nominations. Nominations do not need to be seconded, and a person can nominate themselves and then also vote. For each position, we'll take a voice vote on each nominee in order, in the order they were nominated. Once a nominee receives a majority vote, no further votes will be taken. If only one nominee is per position is nominated, one person nominated, then we can declare the nominee elected with consent without a need to vote. I will now open up nominations for the election of vice chair.
Mr. Chair, it is my honor to nominate for vice chair Commissioner Mark Woodruff.
I have a nomination for Commissioner Woodruff for vice chair. Any other nominations?
Nominate Commissioner Lerner.
I have a nomination for Commissioner Lerner. Nomination for Commissioner Woodruff was Commissioner Wilkinson. Nomination for Commissioner Lerner was Commissioner Hartgraves. Any other nominations? I will now vote on Mark Woodruff, the first nomination. All those in favor of Mark Woodruff as vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Do we need to poll? Okay, would you raise hands and someone count? All in favor of Woodruff, raise. Okay. Okay. We will now look for nominations for secretary.
I have a nomination for Ben Pena as secretary of the executive.
We have a nomination of Ben Pena for secretary, nominated by Commissioner Miller. Any other nominations?
I would second that.
We don't need a second, but okay. Any other nominations? All right. Since there's no other nominations, congratulations to not only Vice Chair Woodruff, but also Secretary Chair Pena for your service. We're not going to play musical chairs. We're going to stay where we're at. Okay. All right. Very good.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Might I make a comment? I have to tell you that the vice chair, Commissioner Jan Fight Miller, I love Mark Woodruff, but let me tell you, Jan Fight Miller, if she could be on, I would continue to want her to serve. She has done a phenomenal job, and we want to thank her for the time that she has been here. It's too bad that we're going off, but we've enjoyed the time.
We really need to rehearse because I think you just stole my thunder. All right, we have several committees: Enforcement Committee, Budget Committee, Audit Committee, liaison to the inspectors, liaison to ESAG, liaison to Broker Responsibility, liaison to Broker Lawyer Committee, and ex officio to the A&M Research Center. I've asked the commissioners if they want to make any change, let me know. I am going to propose everybody stay in the seat they're in. And let me kind of explain. We're expecting 3 new commissioners. It might be today when we're in this meeting, and it might be June or July. So I'm going to have everybody stay where they want to stay. If you do want to swap from enforcement to inspectors or whatever, let me know. We will keep the chairs in place also. We will have chairs theoretically leaving, and that would be Commissioner Miller, Commissioner Williams. But we will handle that when the reappointments are done. I don't want to break up the makeup of the committees now because we're in our kind of busy session. I will tell you, when I was appointed to this, I thought it was very important to serve 6 years and give someone else the ability to serve. I still believe that. The really bad thing about that is we lose talent. and we've lost talent in the past, and we're losing talent with Commissioner Williams, Commissioner Wilkinson, and Commissioner Miller. But I know there's other talent out there, and it's hard because these three commissioners have served this agency for 6 years and have served it, just servient leaders, putting their interests aside. Y'all have no idea the commitment they made, and we're going to miss them. And I would love to change my philosophy, but I truly believe there's other people out there that can take your role and move this agency forward. So if you see them on a break or somewhere, thank them for their service, because someone asked me the other day, said, do you have to move your license inactive when you're a commissioner and just live on the salary? And I was like, no, that's why I'm married to a really good agent, so we can survive. So I just truly thank you for your service, because it's truly servient. With that being said, is there anybody that would like to move the committee, the advisory group, or whatever they're on now, to another one? Is everybody good where they're at? Okay, I didn't hear anybody wanting to do any free agency trades or whatever, so we don't need a motion for that, do we? Okay, good. All right. Now, we're already on agenda item number 8. We are like cooking it, okay? All right, agenda item number 8, report from Education Standards Advisory Committee, Chair Candy Cook. Welcome.
Good morning. How are you?
Wonderful.
Thank you for letting me be here and giving this report. First off, we have our chair from last year who is stepping back away, and Dr. Porter has done a phenomenal job, and we wanted to make sure we recognized his service and want to make sure that you guys understand how proud we were to have him as our chairman. So the Education Standards Advisory Committee met on January, it has 0 on here. I don't know what day we met. Does anybody know? The 9th, there it is. Okay, on January 9th, at TREC headquarters with a Teams component for those who could not be in attendance. First order of business was appointing new leadership. The committee appointed the following officers to serve through 2023, myself as chair, Candy Cook, Bill Stedham as vice chair, and Mike Crowley as secretary. The Broker Responsibility Working Group previously recommended that ESAC open the property management qualifying course outline for review. Our TREC staff presented a draft course approval form to the committee during the meeting based on the committee's recommendations at the last meeting. ESAC approved the changes, including changing the course name to Residential Property Management, and recommended the commission propose the revised course outline at today's meeting. The committee also discussed making the 30-hour real estate brokerage course a mandatory course as part of the SAE requirement, and agreed it would be beneficial for sales agents and ultimately consumers. TREC staff presented a draft amendment to 535.55, education and sponsorship requirements for sales agent license. To address this, the committee approved the draft amendment and recommended the commission also propose the change at today's meeting. The next meeting of the Education Standards Advisory Committee is April 3rd, 2023 at 10 a.m. The committee will continue to discuss exam pass rates as it relates to the time of course completion, and will begin reviewing the Principles 1 and 2 courses to determine if changes or revisions are needed to course content. This serves as my report.
Any questions, comments? I'd just like to add, I love the idea of brokerage being part of the pre-license. We did check statute, and I would love for it to be prior to getting the license. I think once you get a license and then you take brokerage, you might already be married with kids and not be able to really determine which broker you need to go to work for. But I love the idea, and I know it will be vetted. It's statute that finance is in there, but I appreciate the work ESAC does, and I think that brings a really good really good solution to some problems. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Chance Brown, Broker Responsibility Working Group.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Before I get too deep into our report, I just wanted to remind, since it's been 6 months, that we have a couple of rules up for adoption today that came out of this group, and we're excited about that. The first one being the new rule, which is 535-137, which essentially takes the 2-day response time from the broker responsibility rule and makes it applicable to all licensees. And then the oversight rule to 535.2 Part J, that is, instead of overseeing somebody who is untrained or uneducated on a real estate activity one time, changing it to 3 times. So on that note, we met on January 11th here, and most of our discussion revolved around broker associates. And 2 recommendations came out of our group for that. The first one would be, and I don't think this is a right now thing. I think it's probably as we upgrade the computer system and have the ability to do that, we can just add it to the laundry list of to-dos and wish lists that we've created for that new system, is if a licensed broker associates with a brokerage, that should be identified on the TREC website, so that the consumers know there's somebody else that they can reach out to, similar to the IABS. No real difference there. And then the second part of that is, currently, if a complaint is filed against a broker associate, that associated or affiliated broker that person has affiliated with does not get notified. And so we'd want that broker to be notified as part of that process as well in enforcement. Outside of that, our plan for our next meeting is to discuss whether or not a sponsoring broker should have any difference in requirements for licensure or education than a individual broker. That concludes my report.
Okay,
I think
Commissioner Lerner.
it would be a good idea to possibly explore the possibilities of defining what a broker associate is in the Licensing Act. Many other states do that, and I think that could take some of this messy out.
Very good. We could do that. Noted.
Commissioner Miller.
I talked to you beforehand, Chance.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm worried about the overseeing 3 transactions, increasing it from 1 transaction. But I'm okay with it as long as nobody's trying to govern how my company, for instance, does that supervision.
Right.
Because every company's different. The one-man show, he's in charge. And broker's responsible for everything anybody does anyway. So there is that overlying supervisory capacity that has to be there. And I don't want to reduce the broker's position. I also know what the problems are with mentors if we're demanded to make mentors.
Right. And this rule gives all the leverage in the world for the broker to continue to run based on their policies and procedures and not say, hey, you have to do it a certain way or so.
Other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Up next will be the Real Estate Inspector Committee, Chair Lee Warren.
Good morning. The Inspector Committee met in January, and there are a couple items from that meeting that are in front of you today for approval. First will be a modification of the rule regarding when multiple checkboxes are used on the inspection report. This rule makes it clear that if an inspector chooses to check more than 1 box, that an explanation must be provided. For instance, if only the inspected checkbox with no other is checked with no other comments, it would be determined the area in question was inspected and no deficiencies were observed. However, if an inspector checks a deficient and inspected boxes or any other combination therein, then an explanation would be needed. This seems a bit redundant to us as license holders, but we want to ensure that if a consumer sees multiple boxes checked in a report, that there would be a requirement for an explanation. We received public comment on this, both positive and negative, but based on the feedback, it appeared many were just unclear as to what we were actually doing and what this actually meant. I'll be working on an inspector insight here in the next couple couple weeks to hopefully clarify this to license holders so that that is taken care of. Another item in the rule is to make changes that inspectors will be required to use the standard inspection report form even if only a single item system is inspected. When a property that is inspected is subject to a sales transaction, the standards of practice must be abided by. Previously, if an inspector was called out to inspect simply a roof or some single component to the house, they wouldn't have to use the standard form. When the inspection report form was modified and put into use a little over a year ago, there were a lot of modifications that were made, most notably the preamble. That preamble has a lot of information that's directed toward consumer awareness. This rule will ensure that even if a consumer is just getting a single system inspected, they'll still be provided this information to help educate them in the inspection process and to know what their rights and responsibilities are. We previously changed the timeline on when an inspector was required to provide the inspection report to a client. It was previously set at 3 days. It was then modified to state the inspector must submit the report to a client within 2 days of the inspection, provided the inspection has been paid for. As a clarification to that rule, there is a small proposed change here that simply clarifies that if an inspection is paid for prior to the inspection being completed, that the 2-day time frame starts from the completion of the inspection or payment for that inspection, whichever is later, unless otherwise agreed to in writing. So they can make a separate agreement if they choose to do so. Legal 1 and 2 are mandatory required courses for salespersons and brokers, must be completed every 2 years. On the inspector side, our course is the Legal Ethics and Standards of Practice course. Just as Legal 1 and 2 does, the new inspector course will come out in September of every odd year. On the last cycle of this course, the committee and staff took on this project to create the course itself, as opposed to simply supplying education providers with just an outline. It was a huge undertaking, but we were able to get this course out with really good, consistent content for inspectors across the state. We're now in the process of updating that course for release this September. Staff, committee members, and other subject matter experts have been working hard to get this updated to reflect updated rules, hot topics, and much more. You'll see a completed course for approval at a future meeting coming up. One of the other topics we're working on is the possibility of reducing the number of license types from 3 to 2. Currently, there are professional inspectors, real estate inspectors, and apprentice inspectors. The latter 2 license types are used on a very minimal basis. Reducing the number of license types would help streamline the number of processes across the board. This would likely take a legislative change in order to take effect, so the process will be a bit lengthy. The initial thought was to remove the real estate inspector license and keep the apprentice. Most involved agreed that this would be the simplest way to go. One of the main areas of discussion, though, is modifying the pre-licensure requirements for an apprentice license. Currently, there is no education requirement for someone to obtain an apprentice license. I feel this may be an unnecessary risk to consumers in the overall education of the inspector. We're looking at requiring, at the minimum, a possible 8-hour course that covers Texas standards of practice to help ensure that should someone attain an apprentice license, they at least have the base knowledge of what is required from the state regarding what the minimum requirements for an inspection are, from a consistent source prior to ever walking into a home to perform an inspection. We have one member that has dropped off, so you guys will be probably at your next meeting before the next meeting looking to appoint a new inspector committee member. But other than that, if you have any questions.
Commissioner Miller.
I'm sorry, this must be my last hurrah, so I gotta get it said. I really don't know how you're going to go about it, but I think inspections need to be paid before they're done.
I would completely agree. I am not a fan of having inspections being paid for at closing. I think that's a huge risk to the consumers. To allow that to happen, I think, is a real problem. In the way the rule is currently written, there can be a separate agreement to allow that. But I think there's a huge risk of impropriety if you allow inspections to be paid at closing, because what's to say that inspector doesn't soften the blow on an inspection report to try and ensure that it gets paid. Furthermore, if it doesn't close, you have the issue of how does the inspector get paid? They don't, there's no property to put a mechanic's lien on. It becomes a civil matter, and that creates a whole huge slew of problems. So I completely agree. This has been an ongoing conversation. I would like to see that change, but I'm probably going to need more support to help make that happen.
I also have a problem with real estate agents paying for the inspections themselves, even though I know that it is common practice. I think it could bias the inspector, and that just creates problems. We need unbiased inspectors.
Unbiased inspectors is really the key. I mean, it's really the key to everything that we do. And unfortunately, sometimes it does happen that agents will pay. In my own business, it's usually clients that are out of state Of course, with Venmo and Zelle and other different options, that really shouldn't be an issue, but occasionally it does happen. But we did clarify the rule, I think about a year or two ago, to determine who the actual client is, to make sure that that client isn't necessarily the person who pays for it, it's the intended recipient of that. So that hopefully it protects a little bit, but I certainly see your concern there.
Any other comments? I will echo what Commissioner Miller said. As a commissioner, we can only enforce at the minimum standard, and we cannot interfere with business practices or whatever, or best practices, but I think best practices are certainly out there in the industry, but we will certainly work within our boundaries to certainly help. All right? Thank you very much, and welcome back.
Thanks.
Okay, I am going to have General Counsel Vanessa Burgess give the update on unauthorized practice of law. And if Mr. McConnell will be ready, I will bring you up from agenda item 24 up, so you can get your report done. Thought I'd give him a little bit of warning, but General Counsel Vanessa Burgess on the unauthorized practice of law working group.
Okay. Good morning. General Counsel Vanessa Burgess to provide the report from the Unauthorized Practice of Law Working Group. So based on recommendations from the group, the Commission proposed at its November 2022 meeting a new rule, Section 537.1, which was a definitions section, and amendments to Section 537.11, use of standard contract forms. The proposals were published in the Texas Register to allow for public comment. And boy, was there public comment. So the working group reviewed hundreds of public comments received by TREC in response to this rule. And I will say that the majority of those hundreds of comments, and we've never been so happy to have that online comment tool that could sort them into a spreadsheet, I will say. The majority of those comments related to 537.11A4, which, as proposed, eliminated the ability of license holders to use contract forms prepared by an attorney for a brokerage when no commission-approved contract form for mandatory use exists, as long as certain requirements were met. So the group met, and after reviewing these comments and the common theme of those comments as it related to the brokerage forms, the working group recommended dropping the change to A4 and reverting back to the current language for this section with some minor tinkering that's non-substantive, just changing, I think we change the word lawyer to attorney, things like that. But essentially reverting back to the current language of this section, which allows the license holders to use those brokerage forms prepared by an attorney when no mandatory TREC contract form exists, still with the caveat related to that unauthorized practice of law and what happens once you start using the brokerage created forms and recommendations made. So later today, I will be up here talking about rules, and this will be one of the rules I mentioned. And the recommendation of the unauthorized practice of law working group is to withdraw the rule as proposed in November and to repropose with that change, striking that A4 language related to the brokerage forms. Can I answer any questions for anyone?
Any questions? Okay, she mentioned the online comment tool. What a valuable tool that is for us. We love your comments. I'm going to be very blunt. When you comment, I hate this, it really doesn't help us figure out what we need to do. If you say, I love this, then that's okay. So if there's something you don't like, be more specific so we can really dig down, because I think this is a great example of this unauthorized practice of law working group worked really hard. We sent it out and it was overwhelming. This is not good, and gave us the ability to go back. But I hate it, or you're stupid, or that doesn't help us any, okay? So use the tool, let us know exactly what you don't like, and we will certainly work with you. Any other questions? Commissioner Woodruff.
I was just going to say, yes, it was controversial, but the process worked, and that's what I really liked. And I agree with the chair that it would be nice that some of that would have been a little more objective. But, at the end of the day, the process worked, and, I was very happy to see that the membership and the licensees were engaged in the process, and we weren't dealing with it after the fact. So, I thought that was good.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. I'm going to go agenda item number 15, Audit Committee. Can I have Commissioner Pena?
Mr. Chairman, we met on last week on February 7th to review the last installment or the latest installment of our internal audit. At this time, would you like to consider the committed firm?
Yes. We'll move to agenda item number 24 also. I believe Liz Meyer is here to present the audit report. And y'all, we move around that way. If there's someone here, they can get their thing and go back and make a living.
Yes. Good morning. I am Liz Myers. I am the Director of IT Risk Advisory for McConnell Jones, and we're your internal auditors. Today, I'm going to present the results of the public fund investment compliance audit that we recently completed. The agency invests their funds through the Texas Treasury Safekeeping Trust Company, or TTSTC, and takes a conservative approach to its investment vehicles. As of August 31st, 2022, $31,076,111 was invested in securities and overnight repurchase agreements. The purpose of this audit was to assess the Texas Real Estate Commission's compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act, or PFIA, requirements, and verify what was recorded on the agency's financial system and reported to the commissioners and the board agree to the investment statements. The scope for this audit was from September 1st, 2020 through August 31st, 2022. Our focus was on the investment transactions, investment reconciliations, investment reporting, investment officer training, and compliance with the TREC investment policy and PFIA requirements. We concluded that your investments are made in accordance with your policies and state regulations. We noted that the required training compliance report was not prepared and provided to TREC's commissioners and TALC board, indicating that all commissioners, investment officers, and board members have met the required training with 180 days of the last regular legislative date. Because this is a statutory requirement, we rated the internal control as some improvement needed. No worries. We rated the internal, the next audit will begin is the control environment at the governance level, and this audit will focus on the following areas: Commissioner and TALCB board member compliance with respective regulations, information provided to commissioners and the TALCB board, open meetings compliance, and strategic planning process. This concludes my report for today, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Commissioner Pena, any follow-up?
It's a good report. I think probably the biggest item of noteworthy is the advising or reporting back to the commission after the last legislative session that all of the required members have the training within 180 days of the last session. So certainly from a compliance standpoint, the training was done and everybody was in compliance. It's just that notification to the commission. That's just a minor detail.
Okay.
Overall, a good report. Thank you.
Commissioner Miller.
I just want to tell everybody here that having been Pena as a CPA on the audit, chairing the audit committee, is indeed a lucky thing for all of us in the state of Texas.
Thank you.
I would like one of y'all to give us a 15-second overview of where our money is invested for the agents that are here that don't know how we invest the money, where it goes.
Yes.
Renata? Oh, she'll save me.
Good morning, Chair.
Morning.
In accordance with our investment policy, all of our investments are invested in U.S. Treasury notes with the Texas Treasury Safekeeping Trust Company, and then we also have the overnight repurchase agreement. So those are the only two vehicles that we use to invest our funds.
But we do not govern that.
No, sir.
Yeah, that is governed at what level?
By the TTSTC, by that level, by the Comptroller's Office.
By the state.
Yes, sir.
So any money we have is invested with the state, and they determine. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Right. I just wanted the people here to know that we don't have our own 401ks and investment funds, that it is part of the state kitty. And that's not changing. I just wanted everybody to know. Commissioner Pena.
Yeah, there's an investment policy that we have to follow, and in accordance with the act, there's several compliance requirements with respect to those public funds. They are public funds. And so even the training of the officers, of the designated officers over a certain amount of time, I believe it's every other year. And so from transactions to the type of investments to officers getting the training, it's a pretty robust act to be in compliance with. An internal audit obviously looks at compliance with laws and regulations as well. So this installment is part of that, of their internal audit. So it was a good report.
All right, thank you very much. We will move on to staff reports. First up will be Chelsea Buckholz, Executive Director.
Good morning. What a whirlwind few days. It's been fun and fulfilling to be a part of the Texas Realtors Winter Meeting. Delighted that so many are in attendance today. And Texas Realtors is our largest stakeholder group. And it's wonderful to just have the opportunity to have access to so many of our license holders. They're not the only stakeholder group by far, but they are an important one based on their size, and we're thankful to have a good relationship with them. I appreciate the opportunity to be at their conference, and that many of us have had the opportunity to speak at several things. I'll mention our chair spoke on a panel on Friday on trends and issues facing realtors in the industry. Vanessa, our chair, and I spoke at both the Risk Reduction Forum and the Professional Development Forum on Saturday morning. Then this morning, the chair and I were back for the executive board meeting for just a few TREC updates, and then tomorrow we will be back one more time for the board of directors. So I'm thankful for that opportunity. I also wanted to tell you some of the things that we've been talking about at that meeting, and you will hear more about that as staff come up and give you reports, but I'll give you just a few of the highlights. For more than a year now, we've answered our email within one day. That's email that license holders, ask us questions, and we're able to respond to that within a day. Our hold time is within our goal of under 2 minutes. Our enforcement processing time for the first time since 2015, fiscal year 2015, is under 200 days. Between 2015 and 2022 fiscal years, we hovered between 200 and 230 days for processing disciplinary actions. And I'm proud to report that we're down to 176 days. We have more work to do on that front, but we're headed in the right direction. And your attention to that and the budgeting process so that we could hire more staff this fiscal year has made a meaningful impact. We have a high volume of educational courses being processed. In fact, this year, 108 qualifying courses have been approved and 877 CE courses have been approved. That's about a third of the volume just within this short time frame of some past fiscal years. Our license processing time is staying well below our goal of 14 days for all license types. Some are as low as 4 days. So I'm proud of the work of the staff in that regard. I also want to give my thanks to Marion Napoleon and Chuck Jacobus. They have served ESAC very well and have contributed their thoughts and their insights in a very meaningful way. The engagement and the support that our volunteers provide to this industry is unlike anything I've ever seen. This industry gives back, and Marion and Chuck are wonderful examples of that. So I'm thankful for their meaningful contributions. A few process updates I'll provide you, and then I'll sit down because you'll hear a lot from our staff today. First is the RAMP project. I think I've been talking to you about the procurement process for this for what feels like my entire career as executive director, at least 18 months to 2 years. We are now entering the implementation phase of that. We signed a contract at the end of the calendar year in December, and we are moving on to implementation. That contract was signed with our vendor, one that I can now say publicly. Acela is who we're working with on this monumental project. That implementation should be around 18 months. So I'm going to go ahead and round that to 2 years, because I think that's going to be a good management of our expectations. Everything takes longer than I want it to, but I am telling myself, and I want us to each remember, that while speed is important, the quality is more important. And so I'm excited to see this unfold, and I think that this will be a monumental project for 2023 and really 2024. I didn't expect to be talking about a social media platform called TikTok, but I did want to just give you a little bit of an update. In early December, all state agencies received a letter from Governor Abbott prohibiting the use of TikTok and directing 2 state agencies, DIR, which is Department of Information Resources, kind of the state IT department, if you will, and DPS, Department of Public Safety, to develop a model plan that other agencies can use that outlines the prohibition of TikTok on personal devices. We saw the details of that plan last Monday, and we will finalize our own plan by the deadline, which is day after tomorrow, Wednesday. Between the letter that came out in December from Governor Abbott and seeing this model plan last week, we took interim steps to prohibit our employees from using the platform on state time, on state property, meaning in this building, and on any state-issued device. Additionally, we have deployed a solution to prohibit TikTok from our network as an added layer of protection. So we are in compliance with what the governor has asked of us, and as of Wednesday, we'll have that plan submitted to the Department of Information Resources. I'm proud of our staff's quick work in that regard. That basically means that we do not have state-issued cell phones, but if we use our personal device for work, like to check our email, we cannot also use the platform of TikTok or similar devices. It will affect my life, none at all, because I'm not exactly sure what TikTok does, but I know there are others that use it. I think I said Tic-Tac. It's TikTok, by the way. I want to take another opportunity to just brag on our staff for a moment. Earlier this month, we saw icy weather conditions that really were not predicted to be as bad as they ended up being in Austin and surrounding area. Many went without power for many days. It took many days to restore. The hybrid work environment, I'll say, is a huge benefit to our staff on most days. But on the inclement weather days, it is a particular challenge. There's no real justification to shut down our operations, but the juggle of working from home in the midst of crazy weather with power outages, often with no internet, children home from school, ends up being just that, kind of a survival type juggle. Our staff really powered through. There is really no fairness to who could work and whose power was out and whose schools were closed and for how long and who needed to go help a neighbor. But I heard no complaints from our staff. They rose to the occasion. They supported each other. Grace was extended to our team, and they really just impressed me. So I want to thank them for their efforts and for the way that they absolutely weathered the storm. I could keep going. I could talk about a lot of different things, but I don't want to steal the thunder of anyone who goes after me. I will make a note that Tony often has a lot to say at these, but his legislative item is we're going to talk about tomorrow, and so he's going to let others kind of give those reports. So you won't hear from Tony today, but you will tomorrow. Cool, right? Okay. Any questions?
Any questions, Commissioner Lerner?
Are we going to be able to see a proof of concept for the new website and understand the integrations and whatever? Is there going to be a committee maybe to help with the look and feel?
I'm completely open to that. So what is happening right now with the RAMP project is all back end. It's not a new website. It's our database that will then necessitate changes to our website. So we are probably months, if not at least a year away from being able to think about what a new website might look like based on how that implementation goes. But I love the idea of engaging this group to decide what's important about it. I also would love our stakeholders' input on how to support them as best as possible.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. I will ask Robert Hood, Director of Customer Relations Division.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Robert Hood, Director of Customer Relations Division. I am pleased to present to you on the status of the division. On page 15 in your meeting materials, you will find the Customer Relations Division report. This report will reflect the contact center statistics through December of 2022. In December, all metrics for the division trended in a very positive direction. The call volume for December was a little bit over 12,000 calls, which was a slight increase from the number of calls received in November. The hold time for December was 1 minute and 9 seconds, and this was the exact hold time for November as well. 19 staff members were answering phones and processing emails the majority of December. As you are aware, we do anticipate some outlier days in which our call volume is above our 2-minute target. For the month of December, we were successful in maintaining a hold time of less than 2 minutes for 17 out of the 21 working days. As the chart indicates, the last 4 days of the month, our hold time was above 2 minutes, and this was the 4 working days between Christmas and New Year's, after there was an agency closure and staff were taking time off for the holidays. The December comparison between TREC and TALCB is about 90% of the workload is TREC related. On page 17 is our 12-month overview of calls presented to the contact center and the hold times for those respective months. Over the past year, the contact center has been consistently below our 2-minute target, with our shortest hold time of 31 seconds in September of 2022 and our longest hold time of 1 minute and 49 seconds in January of 2022. And just a heads up, in January of 2023, which was last month, we did see a rise in the number of calls, and the hold time was a little bit over 2 minutes. Since then, we have returned to our normal call volume, and our hold times right now for the month of February is less than 1 minute. Next, on page 18, you will find the number of emails the contact center has handled. In December, 2,849 emails were processed, all within 1 business day of receiving them. On page 19 is our fiscal year comparison of the monthly average number of calls we were presented for each fiscal year with the average hold time. Only 4 months of fiscal year 2023 are represented, and we average about 13,000 calls per month with a less than a 1-minute hold time. Again, we did receive more calls in January, and the hold time for the average fiscal year was slightly increased. This will conclude all reports for the Customer Relations Division. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Wood.
I just want to compliment you all for the agents and all the public out there that's watching. Y'all have done such a good job, and I know when we came in, I remember saying, gosh, I'm holding more now than Medicare when I called them. So it was like 16 minutes or 18 minutes. It was a long hold time. We got lots of complaints, and we compliment you and your team for getting the numbers down, and we hope that you keep them there. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
Any other comments? I noticed the email. I mean, we have fluctuations from 5,000 emails down to 3,000, 2,800, and all within a day. So thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Anything else? Okay. Next up will be Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education and Examination Services.
Good morning, Chair Kestner and Commissioners. Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education and Exams for the record. Before I get to reports, I'd like to share a few education-related updates and respond to a couple of questions. First, at the November Commission meeting, Chair Kestner, you asked of the 11,238 applicants who had an overall grade of fail on their first attempt at the sales agent exam in FY 2022, how many of those failed just one part? The answer to that question is 5,869, or about 52%. As a follow-up, you asked of those who failed just one part on their first attempt, how many of those were able to pass the failed portion on the second attempt? And the answer to that question is 3,938, or 67%. So it's a pretty good, indicator of success rate in that second attempt. And if there are any other follow-up questions you'd like for me to pursue, or anybody else would like for me to investigate, I'm happy to bring that information back.
No, thank you.
Okay. So I shared with you at our November meeting that FY22 saw the highest increase in volume of CE provider, CE course, and qualifying courses that we have seen in many years. The CE course applications alone increased by 25% in FY22 over FY 2021. As Executive Director Buckholtz commented, since the beginning of FY 2023, which was September 1st through December, we have reviewed 108 qualifying courses, 66 CE provider applications, and 877 CE courses. Our overall numbers in this fiscal year account for about 1/3 of the applications we received in FY 2022, indicating that we are on track for another high-volume year. As a result of the increase in applications, the education team is growing. We recently filled a vacant position and hired one additional team member. Our 2 new team members joined us on February 2nd and are currently in training, and we are really excited to have them on board. As you know, January 1st saw the launch of the new ERW education program required by House Bill 2730, enacted by the 87th Legislature. We have approved a few QE and a few CE courses, enough to satisfy the initial registration and renewal registration requirements. We are continuing to communicate with education providers regarding this opportunity to incorporate ERW education along with their existing programs. And lastly, the new broker responsibility course was posted on January 1st. As of last week, we have approved 70 providers to offer this course. To date, we have trained 168 instructors to teach the course. This was our first year since the COVID pandemic hit that we returned to in-person instructor training. And so just by comparison, we'd had a total of 173 instructors approved to teach the 21-22 course. So I thought that might be an interesting point for you all. Work has started to revise the Inspector Legal and Ethics SOP course, as Lee mentioned. Work is scheduled to begin this month on the 2024 legal update courses, and we expect to have those materials ready for you to review at the August Commission meeting. And I'm happy to answer any questions on any of those topics before turning to the reports, if you have any.
Any questions? I've got one. Those 108 CE classes, those were new classes, not renewals? Is that?
Those were qualifying education.
Okay.
Yeah.
But new?
New and renewal.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Yes, that's a combination. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay. So turning to the reports, which begin on page 20 of your materials. The first report is the FY to date data for qualifying education providers and courses. Of note is the volume of qualifying real estate courses received so far. And you can see that in the center section of the top. That's the application received. And then those approved is the center portion of the bottom chart, which is those approved. Did I say that right? Received up top, approved below. On the next page, you'll find the same information as it relates to continuing education. As I mentioned, as I just mentioned, you can see in the top section toward the middle, the year-to-date total for real estate CE courses is 877. The next report is the 13-month comparison. The bar graph indicates that February of 2022 was our highest volume month for applications, followed by this past December. So we'll look to see what this month brings for us as a one-year date. And the next report reflects the FY data going back 5 years and year-to-date for fiscal year 2023 by application type, which again indicates some consistency with the volume of applications reported in FY 2022. And the last report is the same data with all application types combined. So we're almost at 1,000 total courses for December. We were at a little over 3,000 total applications for FY 2022. So again, indicating that we are on that same trajectory. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Up next will be Denise Sample, Director of Licensing.
Good morning, Chair Kestner and Commissioners. So before I jump into my reports on page 27, I do want to take a moment, let me adjust that. I want to take a moment to brag on the licensing team. Executive Director Buckholtz touched on the processing times. We're consistently staying well within the 14 calendar day goal on processing all the application types with, the highest volume of applications are sales agent initial applications, and those are consistently hovering around 3 to 4 days. And as a reminder, that is the time that it takes the licensing staff to respond to documents, and it's a cumulative number, and we take the average on all of those applications. So even if we have to go back and forth 5-6 times on one application, those cumulative totals, that cumulative time is calculated into that average. So they're really doing great, staying consistent on that. And Executive Director Buckholtz also touched on the RAMP project, and that's something that my team is preparing to do a lot of that heavy lifting, a lot of the testing that's going to happen. That back-end implementation is talking about what is our process, what do we need to happen, what are the requirements, all of that is going to begin. And so we have previously increased our staff, we filled some vacancies, we're on track to get our new team members trained so that when we are pulling different team members to participate in the testing and requirements gathering phase, our goal is to not take any longer than we're taking now processing those applications while implementing the new system. So with that, we can jump into the reports. The first report is a fiscal year-to-date of licensing applications received. If you'll notice, the top left graph there shows previous fiscal years in full. And you'll see in fiscal year 21, we had a 40% increase in number of applications received for that fiscal year. We received fewer applications the previous fiscal year. We're still ahead of where we were in fiscal year 20. So we continue to monitor the applications received across all license types. So far this year, the remaining graphs on this page represent the first 4 months of the fiscal year. And we are seeing a decrease in initial license applications across all the license types. For sales agents and brokers, it's at around 12%. The sole exception are the easement and right-of-way applications. So you see on the bottom right, we saw an increase of about 250% in those applications, and that's typical when new requirements roll out. We see a surge of applications ahead of the effective date of the new requirements. I anticipate that those will drop off, level off, now that those requirements are in place. The next report is a report on renewal activity. And this is a comparison through December of 2022. And because licenses renew every 2 years, we compare that to fiscal year 2021, excuse me. And so of note is that the renewal rates are holding steady. You may notice that one exception is the easement and right-of-way agent renewals. They went from about 42% 2 years ago to almost 65% so far this year, and we also suspect that that is because of those renewal education requirements that took effect. The next report is a report on license holder counts. I know it's probably hard to see for members attending, but we've broken them out by license type and highlighted active license holders. In fiscal year 2021 and 2022, we saw record increases in the total license holder counts. In 2021, we grew by around 8%, and in 2022 by about 6.5%. By the end of this fiscal year, we do expect an increase in the total license holder count, but not the record levels of increases that we've seen the last several fiscal years. The next report is a graphical presentation broken out by license type. You'll see they do appear to level off. And then the last report is the license application processing time. This is a 13-month comparison, so December 2022, the most recent data is all the way on the right-hand side. And, consistently, we're actually all in single digits for application processing across all the types. And that concludes my report, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
So with respect to license count, we've experienced significant growth within the past couple of years. It would be interesting to keep track of what the non-renewal or the loss of licensees over time to kind of see where if it's going to remain flat or if it's going to come back down. I'm talking about the license count. Kind of like the retention rate or the amount of licensees that are no longer renewing, right? And so I'm wondering if that growth that we've had is sustainable over time in the next 3, 5, 6, 10 years, whatever, as opposed to as quickly as it came, it quickly went out, right? And so is there a metric that you can kind of keep track on the number of licensees that are not renewing and going away?
Well, so the renewal activity report, I generally focus more on that renewal rate because we've had the increase in license holder counts. So you will see there's a higher number of renewal applications that were processed, but the renewal rate is a little more telling in how many of the group of license holders eligible to renew are renewing every 2 years. So that's definitely something, Chelsea and I talk about that, that we're going to continue to monitor and make sure, since I joined TREC, we've been seeing each year more license holders every year since I came on board with the agency. And so we're mentally preparing to see those, those sharp increases come to an end, let's say, or level off or steady. But that renewal rate, that gives us the raw number of renewals that are processed. That's definitely something, that I can explore with the IT team to see what we can pull out. I'm guessing it's the converse of the renewal rate. This is how many did not renew. And we can look at that. But these do show the trends from 2 years before. Perhaps we can graph that out a little, over more time.
Commissioner Lerner.
But if that would be helpful.
Are there processes in place on an ongoing basis to verify DBAs and LLCs?
No, there is. That is one of the items that became kind of a self-service tool with the name management tool. And so that allows instead of the brokers waiting on a form to get submitted and for someone to review it and make the change on the form and hope that we read the name correctly and that it was legible, that name management tool, and I can't think of when that was launched, but I can pull that up and give you that information. But that name management tool allows that full self-service of managing the DBAs, especially with the frequency of how often sales agents change sponsors and they bring their DBA with them. So the name management tool it's not really checked, and it wasn't prior either with the paper form only.
So how do we go about verifying those? Because I've noticed that there's several DBAs registered on our site,
that aren't registered with anywhere else?
We rely on a certification statement in that tool. So, I think that's maybe something that could be explored as an enforcement issue. If there were a
DBAs are
complaint
renewed,
received.
too.
Oh, I was not
Every
aware of that.
10 years.
But no, that's not currently verified.
Okay. I think that's something we probably should look into.
Okay, noted, yeah.
Any other questions?
I just want to let the people know that if you can't see the number, we supervise 234,000 licensees. There's total real estate agents and brokers and business entities, about 227,000, about 176,000 active. So if you can't read this number, you can certainly go on the website and get this material down. But I think that just shows the vast majority of what this lady does as far as supervising licensees, 234,000. So good job.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add that in my first cycle that I've been here, and it was right at around 200,000. So it's been, the growth has been substantial. And so that's why I was kind of curious as to, well, we've got this growth. Is it sustainable over 10? And I'm talking about from a budgeting standpoint and what the numbers are going to look like. And so that was really my...
Yeah. I think almost 30,000 the last fiscal year. Commissioner Woodruff.
Yeah, I've got a comment on that. I think the renewal percentage dropping is indicative of what's happening in the marketplace. We had a 2021, most of 22, certainly was an aberration in terms of the business that was out there. Got a lot of publicity, and a lot of people, of course, got into the business. I think generally the market has been improving for years, and more people have seen that, and that's fueled a lot of the growth. But I think that from a planning standpoint, that to believe it's going to grow in the next year or two as the market potentially regresses back towards the mean, probably would be a tough assumption from a budgeting standpoint. If it happens, great, but I think you almost have to assume that if we continue to maintain the 234, over the next year or two, that would be until things change. So anyway.
Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Next up will be Michael Malloy, Director of Enforcement.
Good morning, Chair, Kestner, Commissioners. Michael Malloy, Director of Enforcement. First report is the case status E1 report on page 33 of your materials. Comparing year-to-date 2023 to the same time in fiscal year 2022, broker and sales cases are up about 12%. As the division heads into the halfway point of the fiscal year, we've already closed 7% more cases than we've received this year. But if you turn to the application and the fitness determination statistics, we've seen about a 22% reduction in the application investigations. However, we've seen a 32% increase in fitness determinations applications, fitness determination being filed with us. I attribute that increase to several reasons. Starting the spring of last year, we now have the ability for people to pay for the fitness determination online, and it's much more of an online process. It will get better once we have the new licensing database, but that has been. We also did some outreach in regards to people's ability to use this, and also we did some improvements on the website to educate applicants to do that have background history issues to use the fitness determination before applying. You also remember this was one of the Commission's initiatives, and we'll actually talk about it further tomorrow as well. So turning to the E2 report on page 34, happy to note that 98% of the complaints are under a year old, with 81% 6 months or less. There is 2% that is over 12 months. Those are either pending a SOA hearing or had a SOA hearing, or we're negotiating an agreed order with the license holder. As you recall, the commission approved as part of the 2023 budget some staff increases. I'm happy to report that we've hired all those positions, and the new attorneys that we added, they will be here 6 months starting in March. So they will complete the onboarding process. That's going to further increase our ability to close more cases. We've already seen, as Chelsea mentioned, reduction of the average case aging, and I expect that will continue to improve over the next 6 months throughout the fiscal year. Another thing to note is we did add additional 2 investigators. Previously, for years, our average turnaround for investigations was about 6 months. We now are at 4 months, which will give turns over the investigation once it's complete, turns over to the attorney, so that's going to speed up the process as well. So I'm happy that those additions of staff has already proven to improve our turnaround time. If you turn to the E3 report, there's been no real notable changes. However, I'm seeking input for this. I haven't changed this report basically because the Versa system that we use really isn't very conducive to it, but now that we have contracted with Acela, I would welcome input on how to improve this and make it more useful for the commission and the public as a whole. So please let me know if you have any ideas for that. Those conclude my reports. Is there any questions?
Commissioner Lerner.
What is our process for notifying people regarding the status of their complaint?
We have the Versa system. We have to do it manually, and provided that it's run manually, then periodically they should be notified, every quarter.
Okay, because our rules say 120 days, and I know I have at least 2 complaints out there, and it's been 150-something days.
Okay.
So I think we need to make sure that everyone is getting notified per the rule.
All right.
And another thing is business entities and unlicensed practice complaints or an unlicensed business entity, how do we verify information if people say, oh no, we're not running our checks through that entity? How's that verified?
Well, it depends on the investigation and how that's performed. We'll question them about their business practice and their understanding of whatever their use is of an LLC. So
do you ask for proof?
It depends on the case. If there's evidence out there that they're actually using that, then yes, we'll ask why the reason is. If it's a situation where there's one out there, but there's no actual prima facie evidence that they're actually using that, then we'll question them about it. But maybe asking for physical proof, it depends on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you.
Okay, the one change I like, and I think this, is the category sells other. There's almost 20%. Eventually, with the new system, maybe break that down. I've always thought that was
some good subcategories, things like that. Yeah.
All right, any other questions?
Mr. Malloy, I would put the percentages in descending order from left to right, top down, left to right, so that you can see the largest items at the top left as you read down.
Okay.
It's just a little difficult to go find, okay,
I guess it's set up
which one's purple and
now.
where is it at, and you got to go hunt it down in that list. And so I'm very systematic and rational, so I'd like to see it in descending order.
No, that's a good.
We did say he was a CPA earlier,
Yes.
okay? Yeah. This was brought up to me before the meeting about enforcement and encourage people to file a complaint. We've got 6 extra staff. I'm not saying that's enough, but, our best practices is, call the agent, call the broker, and then file a complaint. We can only correct what we know. And I know we've talked about the 6 months and you're doing an incredible job. But just like some of Commissioner Lerner's concerns and some of your concerns out there, they're not going to know about business entities, LLCs, and unauthorized, property management stuff unless there's a complaint. So, feel free to file a complaint.
Yeah, I think for members of the association that are out there, this is a self-policing situation. And, a lot of times people believe that, well, surely there's, people are out from TREC or other places looking for, infractions. And, that's not the way it's set up. They respond to, obviously, hundreds and hundreds of these. But, if as a practitioner we want things to be better, then we're going to have to take responsibility for that. To call it out when we think there could be a problem, just like the public, does as well, because that's the process. So you're right, Chairman Kestner. That's on everybody's mind. There's lots of discussion about it, but the only way it changes is if we take responsibility. So,
okay, Commissioner Pena.
Yes, I was going to mention. So, with respect to the unlicensed or an unregistered firm, you got several. You can operate as a person, as a sole proprietor, an LLC, or even a DBA, right? And so when you're looking at unlicensed, to me, unlicensed means they're not a broker. They're not a licensed broker, right? But if you do have someone that is a licensed broker or a firm that's a brokerage, they're licensed. And if they operate under a DBA or under a team name, that's the issue that we're talking about here, right? But at the end of the day, they're licensed. They're just, the name that they're not using is not registered or with TREC. Am I understanding that correctly?
A little bit of both. There are people operating under a business entity license, LLC, whatever, that is not licensed, that they should be, even though they might have a license.
Right.
But there's also people out there that aren't even licensed. They're managing property for their small group at church or their best friends or whatever, and they have no license. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, there's both out there.
Mr.
Commissioner Hargraves.
And this is a question for licensing. I realize it's not your area, but are we requiring proof of a valid DBA when we renew a license under a DBA?
I think what Denise said earlier is that we do initially, but not at renewal. Is that correct?
No, it's still it's based on a certification.
Certification,
Yeah,
okay.
and the initial application, and then the name management tool allows the broker to log in and certify if they're going to make a change, if they're adding a new DBA or deleting an old one. So it's based on the broker certifying that information is correct, and that I believe it says something about they have the authority to use the DBA.
Okay.
And I renew in November, I can answer that better. In November, you also have to certify that you still own more than 10%, or else you have to have E&O insurance. So there's a certification process through that.
Right, if there's a change,
Right.
then you do need to provide documents, but if there hasn't been a change, you certify that we don't have to review those documents.
Okay. Commissioner Lerner?
It was actually from Mike, but for you, so it's pretty much the honor system, is what you're saying?
Yes, the certification statement is what we're using. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. One quick question, kind of for you, but kind of for everyone. I know we've talked about this. When we're doing our agreed orders and whatever, and just for consistency's sake, I'd like the discussion to continue about if an agreed order is based on something that's happened in the past, or you're looking at information from the past in order to give that disciplinary action, it would be great to be able to know that on the order of what went into that decision.
Okay. Something we can discuss, I assume, so.
Just for consistency's sake. Thank you.
All right.
No, just for your comment, Commissioner Woodruff, we will have an online component as part of the ETSELA, so filing complaints will be easier because it will be an online way to do it. Because I know I've received comments from the public saying printing out the form and filling it out and signing it, it's time consuming. So I think that will, make it a little more easier for people, and we'll probably will get more complaints in that process as well.
All right, anything else? All right, thank you. Tom Watson, Director of IT.
Good morning, Mr. Commissioner. I'm Tom Watson, Director of IT, and if you could turn to page I-1. I-1 is showing the actual utilization of some of our web services offering online. The latter part is showing very strong utilization of the renewal features that we offer online, and also strong indication of initial applications. The renewals, you'll see that are about 96%, over 95% of the renewals we receive are through the online service, and over 80% for initial applications. On page I-2 is more of a trending and historical perspective of these online services, and you can see that they do remain strong, they do remain consistent month over month. So there is a trend of continued utilization of our web services. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Commissioner Miller.
I'll just say that I'm glad you're here, and we're all anxious for the 2 years to be over and done with.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here as well.
Any other questions? Okay, very good. Chief Financial Officer Renata Williams.
All right. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Renata Williams, Chief Financial Officer for the record. I'll be presenting the staff reports for the Financial Services Division for the month of December. On page 41, you will find our revenue quarterly budget analysis. This is data through December 31st, and we've collected $4.4 million, which is 31% of our targeted revenue collection. We're slightly below our target, which was 33.3% by the end of December. On page 42, you will find our December budget status report. This is included in the staff reports that are on our websites. This report shows that we've collected, again, $4.4 million, with $9.8 remaining to be collected throughout the remainder of the FY. And as you can see here, 90% of our revenue is derived from our licensing fees collected. On page 43, it's the expenditure quarterly expense analysis. Again, this is data through December 31st, 2022. We had expenditures of $5 million, which is 25% of our projected expenditure target. Again, we are slightly below our target of 33.3% of budgeted expenditures, and 82% of our operational costs are in the salary and wages category. And on page 44, you will find our budget status report. This is, again, the information that is in our staff reports that are on our website, and it shows that we've spent $5 million on operational expenses, with $15 million remaining to be expended in the fiscal year. On page 45 is an operating activity comparison for FY23. In September, our revenue collection was higher than our expenditures. However, during the months of October through December, our expenditures were higher than our revenue that we collected. This is not uncommon, as our revenue collection is generally slower in the fall, and then it picks up in the spring. Next are our holding reports, our investment holding reports. The first one, the TREC operating account 3055. We had one U.S. Treasury note that matured, and those funds were reinvested. The total account balance was approximately $21.1 million in that account. We have $9.7 million set aside for operational reserves, which leaves us with an ending balance of $11.5 million available for operations. On page 47, this is the real estate recovery account 3058. It also had one U.S. Treasury note that matured, and those funds were reinvested. The balance was $4.6 million at December 31st, 2022, we had $607,000 reserved for potential payments within the next 90 days, and that leaves us $3.9 million as the remaining balance. This fund is fully capable of meeting all known obligations. I would like to point out, though, in accordance with Occupations Code 1101.604, if the balance in the recovery trust account on December 31st of any year is greater than $3.5 million, the commission shall transfer the excess of that money in the trust account to the credit of the General Revenue Fund. As a result of this statutory requirement, we will be transferring $1,105,740.60 to the state general revenue account. This is a rather unique situation for us, as this is the first time the agency has ever reached this threshold and transferred from the real estate recovery. And several factors have contributed to this. Those factors are an increase in license holders, in which a fee of $10 is collected from each applicant. As Director Sample mentioned, in December of 2021, we had 222,000 license holders. By the end of the month, December 2022, we had 234,000 license holders. Administrative penalties collected for violations are deposited into this account. Our data supports that there's been an increase in those admin penalty repayments into those accounts. Let's see. For example, in 2020, we collected $48,622. In 21, we collected $92,321. In 22, we collected $107,376. And already by December, we've collected $54,264 into that for the administrative penalty repayments. And the last thing that contributed to this is the average number of recovery claims that have been paid out. They've decreased. So from 2011 to 2016, the average number of claims that were paid were 17.4 each year. And the average annual payment that was paid out of that fund was $671,977. However, from 2017 to 2022, the average number of recovery fund claims that were paid was 10.4. And the average annual payments were $286,000. So that's why we end up having more in the account, and we've reached that $3.5 million threshold. Lastly, on page 48 is the real estate inspection recovery account 3059. It has a balance of $622,384.56, and there are no pending payments. Again, in accordance with Occupations Code 1102.353, if the balance in that fund as of December 31st is more than $600,000, the commission shall transfer the excess of that money to the State General Revenue Fund. As a result of this statutory requirement, we will be transferring $22,384.56 to the State General Revenue. This concludes the Financial Services Division report. Are there any questions?
Commissioner Miller.
This is for the Texas Realtor members who are here, because I've been a Realtor member a long time. And when I started, you never saw a fine out of Texas Real Estate Commission. They just didn't make fines. And so when they started making fines, I thought, aha, they're making fines just to fill up the coffers. I want everybody to understand that money goes directly back into the recovery fund. The commission makes no money out of it, but it's because we do stuff bad and we've got to get our hands slapped occasionally that we are now fined, and I think it is well deserved in most cases.
I'd like to add, one of the things we've talked about as a commission the last year and a half is the recovery fund and the limits. The limit is $50,000 per transaction, $100,000 per agent. That was established in 1992. And don't get me wrong, $100,000 is still a lot of money, but it's not what it was in 1992. I will also say, maybe as an agency, we don't maybe do a good job letting consumers know that if they truly have a claim for recovery fund, that's what that money's for. I will tell you, we have great attorneys on staff that if someone does want money from the recovery fund, a check is not written. There is a process. They must have a judgment. So it's an entire process. But I think it's a combination of more fines and also, 50,000, 100,000 is not what it was in 1992. And that is something we're actively looking at, working with associate members to look at. Other questions or comments for Renata Williams? Commissioner Miller?
Again, for the Realtor members who are here, you have to jump through hoops as a complainant to get that money out of the recovery fund. And they have spent so much more money in attorney fees just to get there than they are going to ever get out of the recovery fund. So the commission is very thrifty on holding on to your money that you paid into it. And I just want you to understand, it was a real shock for me.
Mr. Chairman, those limits, are they adjusted? How frequent? If so, are they by statute?
It's by statute, and the statute was changed in 92.
Okay.
And if you remember, we've had cases before where there's been hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we've been limited to $100,000 per licensee. And, this is horrible to say, but the first in line is the first paid. And it's something that was on our legislative agenda, but I think this brings it to focus. We have that many more members, and that fewer people taking advantage of it is a concern. So
yeah, when you look in again in consideration of the number of licensees out there, the potential for having something significant where you're going to have an increase of claims to pay out. And so maybe the historical record may not reflect that, but certainly a potential commitment and contingency that needs to be considered going forward. There's several ways to go about determining what that amount is. At $3.5 million, that anything in excess of that reverts back to the state's general fund. And so you almost have to model the expected payout of claims, and that can get tricky as well.
Agree.
It's almost like an insurance fund.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? All right. Thank you very much. I will next ask Summer Mandel, Government and Strategic Communications Director.
Good morning. Coming out of the corner. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Summer Mandel, Government and Strategic Communications Director. It's my pleasure to give you a communications update today. As Executive Director Buckholz mentioned, several staff were able to attend and will attend tomorrow the Texas Realtors Winter Meeting, and I was one of those on Saturday. And not only was it really fun to see a lot of familiar faces from when I used to work over there, it was really great to see how invested the Texas Realtors members are in knowing what's going on at TREC. And I think that's evidenced through the things that they share from us, the questions they were asking in the room, and just being willing to share their insights on the day-to-day and maybe ways that we can enhance our communication. So I'm grateful that I still get to hang around some of y'all, even though I left the organization. So for the report here, I pulled data from Google Analytics on top website articles, and this is for the time frame that's at the bottom, just a little bit there. There we go, yeah, November 1st, 2022 to January 20th. And so you can see here the top three. And I want to point out how this data is different from what Director Watson went over. He was talking about our applications, so things that, to renew your license, other parts of the website. This is specifically about articles that I post on the website, so informational stuff. So you can see there were some good numbers there. Also, just to break it down a little bit, page views includes one user looking at the same page more than once. So that can be me going like 20 times at different computers. Unique page views, which counts each each user only once, and minutes spent on the page, which is essentially the amount of time a user has the window open. So, it's important to note that you might have it open and then you go somewhere else and leave it open and you're not really reading it. So the top 2 articles are definitely standouts in page views compared to the rest of the top 10, which aren't listed here. So, for example, number 10 had 1,998 page views for that same time period. The average time on an article page is about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So these data can mean so many things, but my assessment for the articles, it means people are either leaving their article windows open for 2 minutes or they're actually taking some time to read through, and some have much longer minutes spent on the page, which kind of tracks with the length of those articles as well. So you'll see some metrics from the e-newsletters that I sent between the last commission meeting and January 20th. Open rates and click-through rates continue to be super strong. And for a more recent data point that didn't make it into this report, last week I sent out TREC Advisor, and that goes to more than 161,000 recipients. And as of this morning, I checked, it's got a 67% open rate with a 3% click-through rate. The most exciting, the top clicked article was what to expect in the next TREC meeting. So again, a lot of interest in what y'all are doing. So this concludes my communications report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Yeah.
Commissioner Lerner.
I have a couple of questions. Do you have a 2023 plan for outreach? Because I know we started talking about that when you came on staff. I know a lot of that goes out is on social media, and it's about meetings or office closures or update this or update that, but true education stuff.
Yeah, I would say that the committee meeting articles, the intent is for those to be educational pieces because it breaks down what's going on with each advisory committee and the things that they're recommending and the ways that people can get involved and express public comment. It's not limited either to just the website. I work a lot with Chair Kesner and Chelsea and any other staff who are going out in person, which y'all do a lot with the realtors, to talk about those things as well.
Yeah.
So I think that Chelsea said this the other day, we put out a lot of content. I can't make you read it. I can't whisper it in your ear, but we're trying to hit as many points as we can.
Right.
But there's so many things. There's a whole world of things that we can achieve, and the hope is that we're expanding my department so that we have more bandwidth for that.
I mean, yes, you are doing a great job of putting out that information. I think when we talked, like right when you came on, we were talking about doing videos and different things to teach people how to do things related to our industry. And so that's kind of where I was going. And there are a lot of people that don't have social media that can benefit from that instead of just a whole text form through the emails, because I know emails are going out sporadically, I guess. So, and also, I don't know that we've resurrected Coffee with Commission and marketed it correctly or something of that sort.
We haven't done Coffee with the Commission. Really, it's been a year, and I think I said this last meeting, it's been a year of just figuring out the lay of the land. There's a lot of, frankly, communications that was never done before, and things that needed to be done that hadn't been done that I tried to work on and improve. There's a lot going on. Plus, this past season, I've been doing a lot with the board as well. So, for example, the board, I've done some videos with some audio, like explanations of stuff, and help them launch some separate things, which is absolutely things I can do on the TREC side. It's kind of like seasons of who needs help now.
Kind of ebbs and flows. And none of those things have dropped off of our list of to-dos. It's, we have kind of addressed needs organically, And I think this report shows such a significant improvement in how we're communicating with the license holder community. It will always be based on our role, which is license and educate and enforce. Those are the three things we do. But I'm proud of the work of our communications team of one. We will grow that by one more in the coming months, and I'm excited to see what we will then be able to do with another.
And I just want to say for the record, it's not this baby. It's going to be an adult who is capable of communicating. So just in case anybody thought we were just joking around here, there'll be another person before you know it, here to help out.
Quick question. So a couple inspector meetings ago that they mentioned that the distribution list wasn't being fulfilled, that people weren't getting emails. Has that been looked into?
Absolutely. And frankly, without going into each individual's email, I cannot pinpoint the reason, because the data that I get from Granicus, our delivery mechanism, it says we have the email, we delivered the email, it wasn't open. So unfortunately, I don't know. I think that
click rate of 62% is instructive on that.
I get that.
Or this open rate, yeah.
I even signed up for all emails to come to me. I only get real estate ones. I don't get any others. So I'm just saying, is the system working correctly? Is that something we can look into?
I definitely want to look into that system. We're under contract, but that's on the docket, because I think that it goes beyond just this. But yeah, we've cleaned up that list as well, but I think it's a lot of anecdotal things. I think people aren't realizing that we're sending it because there are new subject lines that don't just say TREC advisor or inspector insight. But when you look at these open rates and you compare them to when it did say TREC advisor or inspector insight, we're talking about 20%. We're at 60 to 67%.
No.
So I don't really feel that there's enough evidence to go back to, well, let me call it TREC advisor again.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if people put their name on that little thing on the line, newsletter sign up or whatever it is, and they check they want real estate, they want appraisal, they want inspector, and they're not getting it at all. Like, I know I am not getting it at all.
There hasn't been one that's gone out and since the last inspector meeting.
I get
not this
but
one in January,
I did it like
but
6 or 8 months ago.
Well, I can look into it. I'm happy to look at your email and get with Granicus and see if there's something going on, because again, I really cannot control what happens between me saying these people should get it and then 62% open it, but some people say they've never seen it. It's really like a case-by-case basis. So if you're signed up for those things, then yeah.
Question. How long have you been on board?
I started on January 1st, 2022. Yes.
Okay. We have come miles.
Agree.
Miles. So I think you're doing a great job. Just keep on trucking. We'll get there.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? All right. Thanks.
All right.
I guess we're getting 1.5 new people. Yay. I'm going to run back to agenda item number 12, since staff has gotten their report. I'm going to report on a working group we put together on brokerage services. It's been brought to our attention on a couple things that we're not sure how the statute, welcomes it or forbids it or whatever, and that's transaction coordinating. Are they licensed? Are they unlicensed? Can you be a transaction coordinator for multiple brokers? If an agent leaves my office and goes to work for Commissioner Miller, can they close that transaction that was procured under mine? And so we put a working group together of brokers and agents and some staff. We're also looking at a term that's kind of catching on called expansion teams, where a broker in one market has expansion teams in the other market, and who supervises, who's ultimately responsible. And there's a lot of questions. We met last week, I think, and everybody on the working group has submitted questions, and we're going to get a couple of transaction coordinators in-house and those that work for multiple brokers and just kind of explore. And we might not get any answers, we might not get any solutions, but we need to kind of get a grasp on what's going on. If you're a transaction coordinator for multiple brokers and the same coordinator is writing up the same house for two different agents with two different brokers, or the same broker with two different agents, how does all that work? And I really want to explain, this is exploratory. We're asking these transaction coordinator, offices and teams or whatever, and expansion teams to come in and just sit with us and tell us how they do it, and maybe shed some light to see, what needs to be done legislatively. Personally, I think a transaction coordinator will certainly help protect the consumer, and I think that's why we're here. I know really great agents that are really good agents, and they're not real good on the paperwork. Transaction coordinator is a huge advantage to them, but where do they operate within our industry? And so we're very proactive getting groups like that together to kind of not necessarily come up with a solution, but at least find out what's going on. So we met last week. Everybody on the group is going to have a list of 5 questions. We will send the people for them to answer and give us a little bit more information when we bring them in, kind of like candidate interviews, get some basic information, then we can maybe dig a little bit deeper and save some time. So I'll be glad to field any questions on that, but that's kind of what that brokerage services working group is looking at. The next one is a report by executive committee, agenda item number 14. And this is in your handout or in the material, page 53 through 56. We met December the 15th, and we meet monthly as an executive team, and we talked about, different forms on the website, that the forms are there now. We talked about how we wanted the customer service report to become more operational, update on legislative bills that are pending, talked about the broker responsibility working group format. I mean, currently we name someone to that working group and they're there till they pass away or decide they don't want to do it. There's not any really rhyme or reason. Do we have staggering 2-year terms, staggering 3-year terms? Kind of looking at that, because broker responsibility working group was there as a working group, and now it's really more of an advisory committee. So maybe doing some restructure on that. Talking about associate brokers, and so we kind of took that and put it to the broker responsibility working group and said, y'all help with the issues on that. Then we met again in January 19th. We talked about regarding staff. We have about 157 staff members. The ramp project has been signed. We did a lot of legwork for probably 2 years, 2.5 years, saying this is what we want this new database to do, and let's find a vendor. Then we found a vendor. Then a matter of getting contracts signed, and I think that's a great example of why we don't necessarily need attorneys in every real estate contract, because we get a whole lot more done. But anyway, so that's been signed and moving forward. We talked about LLCs. There was a bill last session where you could pay an LLC for compensation only, accounts. So we've talked about that. So there's a recovery fund. We talked about that earlier. So all those notes specifically are in the handout material, but that kind of covers those 2 agenda items. I'll be glad to answer any questions, Commissioner Pena. Okay. I was hoping to get to executive before we broke. I'm going to ask for a 10-minute comfort break. Okay. Then we will come back. We'll go to agenda item number 16, public comments. Then we'll get some rulemaking stuff taken care of before we go to executive. Okay. So 10 minutes. We are adjourned comfort break at 11:48 a.m. Okay, I'm calling the meeting back to order at 11:59 a.m. We're a minute late, but that's early for me. Okay, agenda item number 16 is public comment, and we have Brenda Coe, United Real Estate DFW, to talk about paragraph 7 of the Farm and Ranch unimproved sale.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. Hi, Jan. As mentioned at the risk reduction yesterday, day before yesterday, they're starting to blur. I just wanted to bring it up, and my apologies, I guess, for not getting into the public comment time, which I certainly should have, but with the Section 7H of Farm and Ranch and 7E of unimproved now being labeled as seller's disclosures with check boxes, it gives me great concern that we're asking now our agents to check boxes on behalf of the seller instead of it being a separate notice like our other seller's disclosure notices. And I just hope that sooner than later something happens to change that. There's no way in the electronic age to ensure that the seller is checking that box, not our agents. If I've preached once for 33 years, it's don't touch the seller's disclosures, and now it's in the form of the contract of how else can we get them to do it. So that's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
General Counsel Burgess.
Okay. I know. Is this working? Oh, that one does work. I was going to say it was user error. Thank you for that. The Broker Lawyer Committee is meeting on February 24th, and I'll make sure, if you want to send me an email to that effect, I can get that in for the comments there. But that is, I mentioned that at the forum. It's an ongoing conversation. We've had multiple questions on it, so stay tuned on that one. But it is helpful if you can also provide that to us for the meeting. That'd be great.
We are moving to agenda item number 18, and for the people, the members that are here, we will go over rules for possible adoption, and that's agenda item number 18, presented by General Counsel Vanessa Burgess. This is the one rule we will vote for adoption.
Okay, agenda item number 18 is discussion and possible action to adopt amendments to TAC 535.223, the Standard Inspection Report Form. The amendments were published in the November 25th, 2022 issue of the Texas Register. And these amendments clarify that when multiple boxes are checked for a particular item on the inspection report form, that the inspector must also explain the reason for checking multiple boxes. The amendments also remove single system inspections from the list of exemptions, meaning that the requirements of 535.223 would apply to those inspections. The Commission received 13 comments in response to the proposed rule changes. The Texas Real Estate Inspector Committee met on January 17th and addressed these comments. And I'll provide a high-level summary of those comments in that discussion. 9 comments discussed the change when multiple boxes are checked. Of those, 3 commenters felt that the additional explanations were beneficial to consumers, with one specifically mentioning that this change would conform with current business practice, and another commenting on a practice of referring out further inspections. One commenter asked for further guidance on how to comply with this change and questioned the current report form format. The Commission will be providing an instruction sheet that was reviewed with the Inspector Committee with the intent to provide further guidance, and that will be released on the website in conjunction with the adoption of this change should the Commission vote today to adopt the rule. Another commenter felt that the change was burdensome, and we had another one who felt that the change was unnecessary. 8 of the comments received also discussed the removal of single system inspections from the list of exemptions. Those comments and comments that were related to both of the changes are highlighted in your materials, so you should have more information on that. Ultimately, the Inspector Committee declined to make changes at this time, stating that the changes are necessary and that many of the opposing comments stemmed from a misunderstanding of the requirements. The Inspector Committee voted to recommend the adoption of these amendments as as proposed. So the staff recommendation here is to authorize staff on behalf of the commission to submit for adoption the amendments to 22 TAC 535.223 as published to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption.
I move that the commission approve staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Miller, second by Commissioner Wilkinson. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Okay, we're now going into rules for proposal. These are rules that are coming before the commission. If we adopt to propose them, then they will be sent out for public comment. We're going from agenda number 19 all the way through 23. You're presenting all three, all of them, correct?
All of them.
All of them, okay. Well, I will let you start on 19 and we'll get through it. Thank you.
Yes, and just for our audience here, who I cannot currently see, the rules that I'm going to walk through, I've tried to highlight the parts that I think are relevant to daily practice, the big items. And I know that rule presentations can sometimes not seem super exciting, but I will try to make it seem super exciting.
Nice.
Because these are relevant to your daily practice. And this, when we talk about something going out for proposal in the Texas Register, you don't have to go find the Texas Register. They will go up on our website under proposed rules. I would give it, I'm going to roughly say a week. Summer will also put something out, an article that will link to the rules as proposed. But I mention this because this that public comment, that's the open window where stakeholders like folks we have here, members of the public, can provide comment and feedback in response to what's being proposed. And there's a lot out there today. And I will try and highlight the ones that I think are of extra, I don't know, maybe extra relevance, things that you're thinking about, that you're talking about, process changes, practice changes. Okay, and so with that, I will start with agenda item number 19, and that's discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 537 as follows. And I talked a little bit about this during my unauthorized practice of law report. So we've got section 537.1, which is a definitions section, and that's new, and I'll mention why that is important, something of importance for those using contract forms. And then 537.11, which is use of standard contract forms and the unauthorized practice of law. So at its November meeting, the commission voted to propose the new 537.1 and the amendments to 537.11 recommended, as I mentioned before, by the unauthorized practice of law working group. And in response to those proposals, as mentioned before, we received hundreds of comments, most opposing the proposed amendments to A4, which is the that would have eliminated the ability of license holders to use the contract forms prepared by an attorney for a brokerage when no commission-approved contract form for mandatory use exists, as long as certain requirements are met. And then after reviewing that, the working group has recommended, as I mentioned before, dropping this change and reverting back to the current language for this section, which does allow for the use of those brokerage forms prepared by an attorney. And the rules that are before the commission today are the result of that recommendation. And so I'll talk a little bit at the end about what that looks like in terms of a withdrawal and a re-proposal. Something that's also relevant is the addition of the definitions, and the one that I'm going to point to in particular is that there is a definition of the new term informational items, which you see in special provisions now, the new special provisions paragraph that the commission adopted at its last meeting, and that went into effect February 1st. And so you'll see, I believe that definition is also in special provisions itself, but I think it's important to note that that's where that tieback is in rule. And that the purpose and intent behind that was to give license holders something to point to when presented with the opportunity to add things to special provisions, is how I'll phrase it. It gives something to point to say, I cannot my license is on the line, I cannot do that, here's what I can do. So I think that's important for everyone to know. Additionally, the amendments to 537.11 reorganize and consolidate the rule for clarity and simplify the language regarding when a license holder is required to use a commission-approved contract form and what is considered the unauthorized practice of law. Again, trying to provide more clarity to license holders and to members of the public on what that means, even though it's often pretty case-specific. So subsections B through D provide further guidance to license holders and members of the public on what the commission considers to be the unauthorized practice of law. And finally, and this is an exciting one, the proposed changes to subsection 8 update the language regarding reproduction of commission-approved contract forms to better account for changes in technology. And the commission's unauthorized practice of law working group recommends the proposed amendments. Therefore, the staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to withdraw and resubmit the proposed amendments to Chapter 537. So we would withdraw the ones that were proposed in November, and we would resubmit the draft that was included in your materials, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
I move that the commission approve staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Miller.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Russell. Any discussion? Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number, comment. I'm sorry.
We've already done them. I want, again, to speak to the members that are here, and I wrote out what I wanted to say if I can find it again. It says, please read the drafts and the proposals, then think about it. Think about how it affects our business and be brave to make comments, and that's your own comments. And we commented earlier that we got a bunch of comments on the unauthorized practice of law. 400 of them. 200 at least were just copycat letters that said the same exact thing. And we read those. Before I got on the commission, I didn't know they were being read, and I was not ever brave enough. I just thought, whatever the commission decides, I'll deal with it and have to train the agents and all that. But guys, this group pays attention and we think about it. So I want y'all to think about it first and tell us what you want us to do, because we can't think of all the little nuances. So please do that. You told me to spread out in that comment.
And these are proposed. I have an issue with one of them, a wording in it, and I will certainly make a comment because it's proposed. It's not being adopted. All right. Agenda item number 20.
Okay. This is another one of those exciting ones, everybody. So agenda item number 20 is discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 535 as follows. So I'm going to specifically call out, we've got more 535 coming up, but I'm going to specifically call out these two, which are recommendations from the Broker Responsibility Working Group. So it would be to propose amendments to 535.2, the Broker Responsibility Group, the Broker Responsibility Rule, and then 535.157, which would be a new rule related to obligation to respond timely. So some of the proposed changes to the rules that I just mentioned are made as a result of the Commission's quadrennial rule review to update terminology and rule citations for consistency and clarity. And additionally, there's a change in there that's proposed under subsection E that's intended to clarify who may notify the Commission of the end of delegated supervision in a situation where the delegated supervisor is or later becomes a broker. There are also two additional amendments which were recommended by the Broker Responsibility Working Group. The first proposed change is found under 535.2 I-5, and it increases the minimum number of times that a sales agent who performs a type of real estate brokerage activity must receive coaching or assistance from a competent, experienced license holder from 1 to 3 times. And I will note, as I have been in presenting this other places, that is the type of brokerage activity activity. So it's not just your first 3 transactions of any type and no more supervision. It's for each type of new brokerage activity. And the second proposed change that's found in 535.2 modifies the language of that subsection to accommodate for new Rule 535.157. So new Rule 535.17 requires both brokers and sales agents to respond to principals to a real estate transaction or their license holders within 2 calendar days. And so I want to note of importance, there were requirements on the broker in the current broker responsibility rule as it relates to response time. Some of those have moved to this new rule that encompasses brokers and agents, and some have remained in the broker responsibility rule. So nothing has been taken away from the broker's responsibility. It's been reorged a little bit, and I think that's just, I want to highlight that over and over again. So the proposed new 535.157 requires a broker or sales agent to respond to their principal, a broker or sales agent representing another party to a real estate transaction, or an unrepresented party to a real estate transaction within 2 calendar days. And that's something that came actually out of a commission workshop, that component of an unrepresented party to a real estate transaction within 2 calendar days. The proposed new rule was also recommended by the commission-appointed broker responsibility working group, which Mr. Brown talked about earlier today in his presentation. Staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the commission to submit the proposed amendments to 22 TAC 535.2 broker responsibility and new Rule 535.157 obligation to respond timely as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal, to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
I was going to say so moved, but I forgot the wording. I motion we accept staff's recommendation with regards to the rule.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Pena, second by Commissioner Woodruff. Any discussion? I will have one discussion. And again, this will be a comment that 2 calendar days, what if it's a holiday or whatever? And so we'll get that comment made. This is just mirroring what brokers are responsible for currently. But like I say, it's proposed. Get your comments in. Any further discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 21.
Okay, agenda item number 21. This is also one that I would highlight as being particularly relevant to some license holders, but important to know, especially as a broker. So this is discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 Chapter 535. I'm going to specifically call these ones out. They're all under 535, but it's 54, 55, 56, 91, 92, 93, 101, 132, and 216. So, as you will recall, one of the Commission's 2022 initiatives and the topic of discussion at the August workshop was to examine the license expire process and what we call the look-back period under 535.93. This proposal would be the start of that process. Before I go into more detail on these changes, I want to note that should the Commission ultimately move forward with the adoption of these rules to eliminate that look-back period, that the agency would provide a runway to both license holders and staff to, 1, clearly communicate, and 2, implement this new process. Rule proposal is really step 1 to a possible implementation. The proposed amendments to 535.91 eliminate the look-back period currently found in 535.93, which allows a license holder to renew after the expiration date of their license without any lapse in active licensure, as long as certain certifications are made. Under these proposed changes, a license holder who late renews, meaning no later than 6 months after the expiration date, would automatically renew on inactive status. A corresponding change is also made to 535.216 relating to inspector licenses, and we did discuss that with the full committee. Proposed 535.91 also adds a new single subsection addressing license reinstatement, the requirements of which are currently found in several different rule sections, as well as a subsection regarding renewing on inactive status to be more consistent with the language in 535.216. As a result, language related to license reinstatement is moved from 55 to 56. The proposed change to 535.54 reflects the proposed repeal of 535.93. The proposed change to 535.101 would remove the late reporting fee of $250 to reactivate a license, and as a result of the elimination of that look-back period. In 22 TAC 535.132, proposed changes are made to remove references to the waiver provisions in 55 and 56, as well as residency requirements, which were removed from Chapter 1101, Texas Occupations Code, as a result of the agency's most recent sunset review. So that's really a cleanup component, because these are also part of that Chapter 535 review. In order to mirror the format of 535.216 relating to inspectors, relevant language of 93 has been added to 91, and as a result, 535.93 is no longer necessary. Subsection B of 535.55 also contains a proposed change recommended by ESAC that would require a sales agent to complete the 30-hour qualifying real estate brokerage course as part of the 90 hours of qualifying courses that must be completed by the expiration date of the sales agent's initial licensing period. I'm going to talk more about that in just a minute, but I'm just noting that that is also in there because when we pull rules out, they're all like this. And the remainders of the changes are either updates to terminology or form for consistency throughout the chapter and are made to reflect updated processes. The staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the commission to submit amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 535 as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the register for publication and public comment.
Chair would entertain a motion.
Motion to accept the proposed staff recommendations.
Motion by Commissioner Woodruff, second by Commissioner Hartgraves. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Next to last rule.
Okay.
22.
Yes, this is an inspection report related one, but also exciting and something to note because this is an important area that impacts the business, all brokerage activity, really. So discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 535.222 inspection reports. So the proposed amendments to 535.222 address the situation where payment is received prior to the scheduled inspection and require the report to be delivered to the client within 2 days of completion of the inspection. And the Texas Real Estate Inspector Committee recommends the proposed amendments. Staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit amendments to 22 TAC 535.222 inspection reports as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
Move that the commission approve staff recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Williams.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Woodruff. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 23, the last proposed rules.
The last of the proposed rules, that's right. So agenda item 23 is discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 535. As noted in your materials and currently displayed up on the screen, it's a lot of sections, they're right there. I will provide some highlights of these changes, but please note that you have the details related to all these changes under this item in your materials and also up on the website. These changes encompass both advisory committee recommendations, which I'll note to you in just a minute, and changes made as a result of the Commission's quadrennial rule review. So first, the proposed changes to 535.64 streamline the rule and modify 2 of the qualifying course approval forms that are adopted by reference. The proposed changes to the agency's real estate brokerage course approval form are being made to better address the broker-agent relationship and associated responsibilities, as mentioned during the ESAC report earlier today. And also the proposed changes to the property management course outline, which is being renamed the residential property management course, though it still has commercial in there. I will note that. The thought was that it's mainly residential. That's where we're seeing that consumer harm, the interest, the practice areas, but it's still got some commercial in there. And so those are being made to more accurately reflect the agency's jurisdiction and ensure relevancy. The course approval form revisions were recommended by the Education Standards Advisory Committee. Next, the proposed changes to 535.218F serve to extend the amount of time an instructor of a ride-along inspection course can provide a certificate of course completion to receive continuing education credit. Now, such instructors can provide documentation within the instructor's current license period for a course taught within the same term. The proposed changes were recommended by the Texas Real Estate Inspector Committee. The remainder of the proposed amendments to 535 are made as a result of the Commission's quadrennial rule review. The proposed changes update terminology for consistency and clarity throughout the chapter. Additionally, the following proposed changes, I'll highlight them. So in 22, 535.58 and 535.133, proposed changes are made to remove references to residency requirements, and that's a little bit of a cleanup from the agency's most recent sunset review that eliminated those residency requirements. Proposed new 22 535.120 makes clear that a license holder cannot engage in real estate brokerage activity while on inactive status. I want to point out that this is prohibited by statute already. The thought was to create a rule to just really hit that message home. Also gives you something else to point to in those instances. The proposed changes to 535.141 are made to better track Chapter 1101 of the Occupations Code and to better reflect the potential for consumer harm. The proposed change is now subsection C2D corrects a rule reference. The proposed change in subsection C2D corrects a rule reference, and subsection I is removed to more appropriately reflect agency practice and jurisdiction. We've got some changes to 212 and the proposed repeal of sections 535.209. And then we've got a change in 535.213 that reflects the expiration of those sections by rule. So that's really cleanup of those inspector education changes that happened a couple of years ago. We're just getting rid of the ones that are no longer applicable. And then the proposed repeal of subsection C in 535.218 is the result of duplicative language. Subsection D1 is removed to account for the scenario whereby an inspector renews the inspector's license after the license's expiration date. Again, there are a lot more changes in there that you have in your materials, but the staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 535 and the forms adopted by reference as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Russell, second by Commissioner Pena. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All against? Any abstaining? Motion carries. All right, thank you. We will now go to agenda item number 26, discussion and possible action regarding future agenda items. I do have one for the Budget Committee. If we could budget some money to get a clock fixed in the back, it would certainly help the chairman's ability to see that clock, okay? Any other agenda items y'all want to see on the next agenda? Okay, agenda item 27, and we're going to finish this, go to one agenda item, then we're going to executive, and I will dismiss you. When I dismiss you, make sure you sign out or you are not here. Okay, agenda item 27, I'm really excited about. It talks about future meeting dates. And that is really exciting stuff. This commission had an idea a couple years ago, why do we always meet in Austin? And so our next meeting, commission meeting, will be May the 16th in Houston, Texas, okay? And so we're going to try to maybe not do Austin every time, but reach out. Commissioner Miller has vetoed Van Horn, so it looks like Houston, May the 16th, okay?
It's a Tuesday.
That is a Tuesday, I believe, okay? And then we still have August 7th and 8th in Austin, November 6th and 7th, okay? I am going back, like council tells me to do, to agenda item number 17. It is 12:29 p.m. We are going into executive session to discuss pending litigation or obtain advice of legal counsel on agenda items pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 and personnel matters regarding the performance review of executive director pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.074. We are adjourned for executive at 12:29 p.m. If you're here for CE, you can sign out. I think we'll be in executive probably an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, and then we will come back and we will do agenda item number 24, 25, and then the really exciting one, agenda item number 28, which is the agenda item to adjourn, okay? So we'll be back in approximately an hour. Okay, I will call the meeting back in order at 1:45 p.m. I will apologize for the delay. We estimated an hour, but by the time we get any business done and eat lunch, it's usually a little bit over. Okay, I am going to move to the last remaining agenda item before agenda item 28 to adjourn. If you would go back to agenda item number 25, discussion and possible action regarding annual performance review and salary of the TREC executive director. I will start this off saying we reviewed the executive director, both the commission, the 9 commissioners, and the 9 board members on the appraisal side, along with about 20 staff members at the director level and below. And the executive met with executive Director Buckholtz. I know the appraisal board executive committee also met with her. Then we just met with her in executive session. And I mean, nobody walks on water. Nobody, hits a home run every time. I personally think the evaluation was very good. I think there were things that we definitely want to see improved on, but I think the agency is going in a really good direction. And I will open it up for other commissioners to make a comment about the process. I'm really happy on the number of people that participate in the process. And I don't know another chief position like that invited some staff. I don't know if I'd want my staff evaluating me, I'll be honest with you. Okay? So, but Commissioner Woodruff.
Thank you. Yes, I thought the process was, very telling and very consistent with, the responses around your, the director's performance and growth and leadership and support for, staff and I think that, in my opinion, that while we've all got opportunities for growth, I was very impressed that the director was open to, had really listened to the feedback, taken the feedback to not to heart or to consideration for how she could improve, and yet overall, I felt like her performance was excellent. And, I think that was reflected for the most part in the reviews. And so I know I appreciate her support. So,
Commissioner Hartgraves.
Will the board, obviously their responses were considered when we considered our evaluations. When will they meet again? And will they discuss, will you have a similar meeting to this where they discuss their review as well, even though technically ours is the only one that matters, so to speak?
They met earlier in February and had a similar conversation, met in an executive session, provided me with feedback. And then in an open meeting, they just basically announced that had happened because they don't have any decision point per se. Theirs is more informational for you to use.
Okay, I just want to make sure that they had an opportunity to voice those things like we do.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Anything on the review you would like to add?
I only just thank you for your encouragement. Thank you for all of the feedback. I appreciate it. I receive it humbly and look forward to constant improvement.
All right. I would entertain a motion or discussion on salary.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that effective March 1st that we give a 7% annual raise increase.
A second.
I have a motion and a second at 7%. Let's open that for discussion. Any discussion?
Yes, I do. I have one. Needless to say, the 7% raise, increase, better word, is very deserving. I think you've done a good job. You brought really good people around you. But as we all know, as you get to the top of that pyramid of anything, whether it's a small pyramid or big one, you got to want to be there. Because as you advance within this agency, you're going to be receiving phone calls because you're the person. So you've shown me that you want to be here and you want this agency to grow. So this is just a start, and continue to grow and grow your team.
Commissioner Wilkinson.
Well, I will just state for the record that having been here before you came and now seeing the improvements over the last 6 years, as my term probably will be ending pretty soon, it's been night and day, and you've really, really done a superb job, first as general counsel and then moving up to being the executive director, and we appreciate your leadership and all you do.
Commissioner Russell.
I appreciate your accessibility to the commissioners. I've been coming on just about the same time you started here, and whenever I had a question or I needed help, you responded or either saw that whatever question I had was answered, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Miller.
I want permission to call you when I need you, even though I'm not here anymore.
After Commissioner Pena's statement about receiving phone calls, we will have her phone disconnected. Okay, so any other comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor to increase it to 7%. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. And let me say, I think we do a good job looking at other agencies and where we're at and stuff. And I mean, we went from like probably 185,000 licensees since I've been here 4 years to 234,000. And if there's one thing you always do, we did it twice last year, is not only merit raise, but also inflation raises, because I think you truly value the staff that makes you look pretty good. And so we recognize that also, staff. Okay, I'm about to entertain a motion to adjourn. before I do, I'm not missing anything, am I? Okay. Before we do this, there's a possibility this might be the last commission meeting with Commissioner Williams, Commissioner Miller, and Commissioner Wilkinson. And I said this earlier, but I really want you to know that we appreciate what you did for this agency. And a lot of people talk about, and you said it earlier, between me and you, about how far the commission has went. A lot of those were in place before I showed up, before Commissioner Hart-Graves or Commissioner Russell showed up. But I appreciate the sacrifices you've made to move this agency forward. And I think my philosophy is you don't reappoint. And I think there's talent out there, and I just hope we find the same talent we have leaving that, coming in that we have leaving. So thank y'all for your service. You might still be here in May. I don't know, but just FYI.
Just one thing. Could we get a picture of us maybe before we leave? The three of us that came on, maybe in front of you, all you guys, would be great. With all the team here, so it'd be great.
Why don't we have a motion to adjourn, and then we will do photos.